of July.
Happy 4th of July.
Thank you all for joining us today as we celebrate the 245th birthday of this wonderful nation of ours. Yes. This point has Commander John Donahue of the Oliver Chase American Legion Post to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. John?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commander Donahue.
Thank you, Commander Donahue.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to thank Joe Brady for being here and for providing the patriotic music.
Thank you, Joe.
We felt it was important to have a public celebration of the 4th of July, especially this year after what we endured over the last 16 months. Let's take a silent pause for a few moments to remember those we've lost. Thank you. We have a special treat today. Thank you, Rebecca. Dick's Jones environs were a hotbed of activity during the American Revolution. George Washington's headquarters were on Main Street in what is now the 900 block. In fact, he gave Benedict Arnold command of West Point at this location. We all know what happened there. There were several skirmishes in Dixville. The British burned the village at least twice. Fort Independence was located in what is now Fort Hill Park. In fact, the readouts are still visible. We have a special treat for everyone today. Uncle Sam will be reading the Declaration of Independence. Uncle Sam is linked to Samuel Wilson, a meat packer from Troy, New York. During the war in 1812, he supplied meat to the United States Army and stamped the barrels U.S. Soldiers said that the U.S. stood for Uncle Sam, and a legend was born. So without further ado, I present to you our Uncle Sam, John A. Isabella Jr.
Thank you, Paul Revere. Paul Burns. I see you did your homework on me. Anyway, it's really great to be here that we're able to celebrate and remember this very special day in our nation's history. You know, the fact that there's so much going on in our society today, politically, economically, socially, etc. A lot of differences, but we must remember one thing, that we live in the greatest country in the world and we were able to air these differences because we live here. And with that being said, yes. With that being said, today we should all hit the reset button because we are not Democrat, we are not Republican, we are not liberal nor conservative. We are Americans. And now it is my honor to read the special declaration that was signed by John Hancock. And I think he just gave an acknowledgement. Hold on. Okay. That's what's nice about doing things live. This document was signed 245 years ago by John Hancock and so many other notable Americans, patriots. And I'd like to read the Declaration in its entirety, something we should all be mindful of on this special day. It reads as follows. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connecting them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that wherever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a sign to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the necessity, such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent shall be ordained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for imposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary policies. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English law in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete their works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring us on the inhabitants of our frontiers. The merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been waiting and wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce to the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and the right ought to be free and independent states, that they be absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Thank you. On a much personal note, more personal note, I would like to personally thank my lifelong friend here, Paul Burns, for agreeing to come out on such short notice. My buddy back there, Joe Brady, on the bagpipes. John Donahue, my neighbor. You won't find a man more patriotic than John. And certainly, all of you who took the time to come today, and those of you who will be viewing this maybe later on social media. We did not do this for political attention. We did not do this for any other reason other than to make this day recognized and remembered, because Peekskill has always been a city of celebration. We had a little setback with the COVID pandemic, We didn't do our parade and fireworks last year and again this year, but in good conscience, I and others like me could not let the day go by without some acknowledgement of this most important day in our nation's history. So God bless you all, and God bless America.
Thank you, Uncle Sam.
Show what you prefer, Paul. Good job. Enjoy your day. Delighted. I hope so. Better.
Left leg up. Thank you.
Ready to go next year in March? Good. Beautiful, you know, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you, John.
Does everybody have a flag that wants one?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take one day at a time.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for doing this. It was very
If
nice.
anybody wants to take a picture with Uncle Sam,
Oh, come on. Your photo.
post it on social media.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
They don't want to take pictures when you dress like that.
Thank you for coming out. What's your name? Gillian? Thank you, Gillian. Yeah, it's important we remember our history, that's for sure.